He mocked me in his group chat after I asked where our relationship was going, saying, "That was so cringe. I'm glad I said no." He forgot I was still in the chat. I replied, "Dodged a bullet." Then I forwarded the screenshots to his mother, who had been secretly planning our wedding. The chaos was immediate. My name is Natalie Rowan. I'm 34 years old, and until that night, I thought I understood the man I loved. Not completely, but enough. At least I believed I did. Owen and I had been together for almost 3 years. We weren't dramatic. We weren't the kind of couple that needed attention to feel real. We were quiet, predictable, the kind of steady people assume naturally leads to marriage. And for a long time, I assumed that too. I didn't wake up one day and suddenly question everything. It was slower than that, subtler. Small moments that didn't feel like problems on their own, but never quite resolved either. Conversations about the future that always stopped just short of clarity. Jokes about marriage that never quite turned serious. Promises that sounded right, but never solidified into anything I could actually stand on. I told myself that was normal. That not everyone moves at the same pace. That real relationships don't need constant reassurance. But over time, something inside me started asking a question I couldn't ignore anymore. Where was this actually going? That night wasn't a proposal. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't planned to impress anyone. It was just honesty. I chose a place that meant something to us. Somewhere we had spent hours talking about everything that felt small at the time, but in hindsight had been building something bigger. Work, timing, family. The kind of conversations people have when they think they're moving toward the same future. The air was calm, quiet. Nothing about it warned me that I was about to see everything differently. I remember standing there, watching him walk toward me, relaxed, smiling, completely at ease, like he was stepping into a normal evening. Maybe that was the first thing that should have told me something was off. I didn't rehearse anything. I didn't want perfect words. I just wanted the truth. So I gave it to him. I told him I loved what we had built, that I didn't need perfection, just something real, that I was tired of speaking about the future like it was somewhere distant, instead of something we could step into together. Then I asked him, not to marry me, but to be honest. I asked him whether everything we had been building was actually leading somewhere, or if I had been the only one treating it that way. For a second, everything held still, not dramatically, just enough. His expression shifted, subtle but unmistakable once you knew what to look for. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't relief. It was hesitation. And then he smiled. That smile stayed with me long after everything else fell apart. Because it wasn't cruel. It was polite, careful, measured. He didn't answer the question. Not really. He looked down for a moment, then back at me, and said he needed time. At the time, I accepted that. I told myself that was maturity, that real decisions deserve space, that maybe I had surprised him, that maybe he just needed a moment to process something bigger than he expected. I respected him enough to believe that. That was my mistake. We finished the evening like nothing had broken. That's the part that still feels unreal. He was calm, gentle, controlled, like he was managing something, not because it mattered deeply, but because it needed to be handled carefully. I didn't understand that then. I do now. When we parted, he kissed my cheek and told me he'd call later. I went home holding on to something fragile. Hope, confusion, a quiet insistence that nothing had actually gone wrong, that I just needed to wait for things to settle. I walked into my apartment and didn't turn on the lights right away. The silence felt different, not peaceful, waiting, like something unfinished was sitting in the room with me. My phone buzzed. I looked down, expecting his name. It wasn't Owen. It was that old group chat, the one we hadn't used in months. I had forgotten I was still in it. Apparently, he had too. I opened it without thinking, and there it was. His message, then another. Then the one that made everything inside me go completely still. He said that whole conversation was cringe. Not awkward, not complicated. Cringe. Then he added, "I'm glad I said no." I stared at the screen. Once, twice. Same words, same meaning. But the tone told me everything. He wasn't conflicted. He wasn't overwhelmed. He wasn't struggling with a difficult decision. He was entertained. And then the replies came in. Laughter, jokes, comments stacking on top of each other like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. Like the most honest moment I had shared with him was just something to pass around. That's when it hit me. Not heartbreak. Clarity. Because in that moment, I understood something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. He never said no to my face. But in that chat, I realized that was exactly what he had meant all along. And suddenly, everything made sense. The hesitation. The smile. The careful way he avoided answering. He wasn't protecting me. He was managing the moment. I didn't move, didn't react, didn't even breathe differently. I just kept reading. And with every message, one thing became impossible to ignore. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't one bad moment. This was who he really was, when he thought I wasn't looking. And now, I had seen it, I didn't cry. That's the part people always get wrong. They think a moment like that hits you all at once. Sharp, loud, overwhelming. That you drop your phone, or break down, or feel something collapse inside your chest. It didn't happen like that. It was quieter, colder, like something inside me had just aligned. I kept scrolling. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to understand how far it went. One of his friends sent a laughing emoji. Another made a comment about how I had basically cornered him into a proposal talk. Someone else asked if I had really expected him to say yes right there. That one stayed with me, because it meant he told them everything. Not just what I said, but how I said it. My tone, my words. The exact moment I chose to be honest. He didn't just share it. He handed it over, piece by piece, for them to dissect, for them to enjoy. My fingers tightened slightly around the phone. Still no tears. Just clarity settling in deeper. I went back and read his messages again. Slower this time, looking for something, anything, that sounded human. A hint of discomfort. A line where he softened it. A moment where he said I didn't deserve that. There was nothing, only amusement. That's when something shifted. Not emotionally. Decisively. Because I realized something I hadn't been willing to admit before. He didn't hesitate because he cared. He hesitated because he didn't want to deal with the consequences in that moment. He wanted time, not to think, but to manage, to find the cleanest exit, to protect how he looked while he figured out how to step away. And I had just made that harder for him. That was why I became the joke. Not because I was embarrassing, but because I disrupted the version of his life he was comfortable in. I exhaled slowly, set my phone down, picked it up again. Because now I wasn't reading this as someone in love. I was reading it as someone who had just been shown the truth. And the truth rearranges everything. Memories started shifting. Small moments resurfacing. The times he paused before answering anything about the future. The way he joked about marriage with other people, but never with me in a real way. The slight tension whenever conversations got too direct. I had explained all of it away. Now I couldn't. Now it all pointed in one direction. I wasn't his future. I was his convenience. Something stable. Something easy. Something he could stay in until he decided otherwise. And tonight, I had forced a decision he never intended to make. I looked back at the chat. More messages. More reactions. Then I saw it. Someone asked him what he was going to do next. His reply came fast. Too fast. Just gonna let it die down. She'll get over it. I let out a breath. Not a laugh. Just something leaving me. Because that sentence did more damage than anything else. Not the insult. Not the mockery. That, the assumption, that I would stay. That I would shrink myself back into something manageable. That I would pretend this didn't matter enough to walk away. That's when it became final. Not emotional. Not dramatic. Final. I picked up my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen. For a moment, I considered leaving. Quietly. Blocking him. Disappearing. Letting him believe whatever version of the story made him feel comfortable. That would have been easier. Cleaner. But then I looked at the messages again. At the laughter. At the way my reality had been turned into something disposable. And I understood something clearly. Silence would protect him. Not me. So I typed. Slowly. Carefully. No anger. No emotion. Just truth. Dodged a bullet. I hit send. The chat went silent. Immediately. No typing bubbles. No reactions. Nothing. Like the entire room had just stopped breathing. Then his name appeared. Calling. Of course. I watched the screen light up. Vibrate. Stop. Then start again. 3 calls. Back to back. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because now, timing mattered. He thought this was something he could fix. Explain. Reframe. Turn back into something manageable. But I wasn't interested in managing anything anymore. I opened the chat again. Scrolled back. Took screenshots. Every message. Every reaction. Every word he thought I would never see. My hands were steady now. Completely steady. Because this wasn't emotional anymore. It was clear. And clarity doesn't shake. When I finished, I stared at the images for a second. Then opened my contacts. Scrolled. Found her name. His mother. The woman who had hugged me not long ago and told me she couldn't wait to officially call me family. The woman who had already started planning things I didn't even know about yet. I hesitated. Just for a second. Because once I did this, there was no going back. No quiet ending. No soft exit. This would change everything. But then I thought about his message. She'll get over it. And just like that, the hesitation disappeared. I attached the screenshots. Typed one sentence. Then pressed send. The message delivered instantly. And for a moment, nothing happened. No reply, no call, no reaction, just silence. But this silence felt different. Not empty, building. I set my phone down, waited, and then it started. The first call didn't come from him. It came from his mother. Her name lit up on my screen, and somehow that felt heavier than anything else that night. Not louder, not more urgent. Just inevitable. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. Hello? There was a pause on the other end. Not confusion, not hesitation. Control. Natalie, she said softly, is what you sent me real? No accusation, no disbelief. Just a question that already knew the answer. Yes. Another pause. I could hear her breathing, slow, measured, like she was holding something together with both hands. I didn't know, she said. And that was the first thing that actually hurt. Because I believed her. There was no defense in her tone, no attempt to minimize it, just quiet shock settling in. I'm sorry, she added. Not dramatically, not loudly, just enough to make it real. I didn't send it to hurt you, I said. I just thought you deserved to know. I do, she replied immediately. I do deserve to know. Her voice tightened slightly on the second sentence. Not at me, at him. What exactly happened? She asked. So I told her. Not everything, just the truth, the conversation, his hesitation, the messages, the tone. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't need to. Reality was enough. She didn't interrupt, didn't defend him, didn't soften anything. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then she exhaled. I've been planning a wedding, she said quietly. That landed. Not because it surprised me, because it confirmed how far the illusion had gone. I know, I said. I've spoken to venues, she continued. I've even talked to your sister about dresses. I thought... Her voice faltered. Just slightly. I thought you two were certain. There it was. Not anger, not blame, just realization. We were, I said, then corrected myself. I was. Another silence. Heavier. I raised him better than this, she said finally. Not defensive. Disappointed. Deeply. And somehow that made everything feel even more final. I'm not asking you to fix anything, I said. I just needed you to see it. I'm glad you showed me. A pause. Then, he's been calling me. Of course he had. What did you tell him? I asked. That I would call him back. Her tone shifted. Colder now. I wanted to hear from you first. I closed my eyes for a second. That choice, hers, not mine, shifted everything. Because now, he didn't control the story anymore. Thank you, I said. You don't need to thank me, she replied. You were the one who was humiliated. That word hung in the air. Humiliated. Naming something I hadn't fully allowed myself to feel yet. I'm not going to marry him, I said. Simple. Clear. Final. I understand. No argument. No persuasion. Just acceptance. I won't contact you again unless you want me to, she added. But Natalie, I waited. I'm truly sorry. This time, her voice wasn't controlled anymore. It was quieter. Real. Thank you, I said. And this time I meant it. We ended the call without drama. No long goodbye. Just closure. Or something close to it. I set my phone down. For a moment, everything was still. Then it lit up again. Owen. Calling. Again. And again. And again. I watched his name flash across the screen. Urgent. Relentless. Too late. I let it ring. Once. Twice. 5 times. 10. Then the messages came. Nat, please pick up. This isn't what it looks like. They're taking it out of context. I almost smiled. Almost. Because there was something predictable about it. The shift. From silence to panic. From control to scrambling. I didn't mean it like that. It was just a joke. Can we talk? That one lingered. Can we talk? As if this was still something shared. As if we were still standing on equal ground. I didn't answer. Because now I understood something clearly. This wasn't about explaining. Or fixing. Or even ending things the right way. This was about reality catching up to him. And for the first time, he didn't get to control how it played out. I walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Everything looked the same. Lights. Movement. Life continuing without pause. But something had changed. Inside me. A line had been crossed. Not by anger. Not by betrayal alone. But by clarity. The kind that doesn't fade. Behind me, my phone buzzed again. And again. And again. I didn't turn around. Because whatever came next, I already knew one thing. I wasn't the one losing control. He was. And this time, I was going to let him feel it. I didn't answer him that night. Not because I needed time. Not because I was confused. But because, for the first time in our entire relationship, I understood the weight of silence. Owen had always been good with timing. He knew when to speak, when to soften things, when to redirect a conversation before it went somewhere uncomfortable. He didn't do it aggressively. That was the problem. He did it smoothly. And I let him. Because I thought that was balance. Now I knew it was control. so I let him sit in it. The calls slowed sometime after midnight. The messages stopped not long after, not because he was done, but because he was waiting. Waiting for me to respond, to soften, to give him something he could work with. I gave him nothing. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight that felt strangely normal. That was the unsettling part. Everything outside my body was the same. Inside, everything had shifted. My phone stayed quiet for a few minutes. Then, it buzzed. One message. I'm outside. Of course he was. Of course he skipped straight past distance, past respect, past any kind of pause, and came directly to my door. Because that was how he handled things. Close the gap. Control the situation. Force the conversation. I sat on the edge of my bed for a moment, staring at the message. Then I stood up, walked to the window, looked down. There he was, leaning against his car. Except this time, there was no ease in it. He kept checking his phone, pacing, running his hand through his hair. Good. I let him wait. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Long enough for discomfort to settle in. Then I grabbed my phone, walked to the door, and opened it. He turned immediately. Natalie. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. And for the first time, he hesitated. Not dramatically, just enough. Like he couldn't quite find the version of me he was used to speaking to. Can we talk? He asked. There it was, still framed like a request, still carrying the assumption that this was something we would work through together. We are talking, I said. Calm, flat, nothing for him to hold on to. He exhaled quickly. Okay, look, I know how this looks. It looks exactly like what it is. No anger, no raised voice. Just truth. He blinked, shook his head slightly. No, it's not like that. They were just joking. I was joking. It got taken out of context. You said you were glad you said no. I watched his face. That pause, that flicker, that realization that denial wouldn't work. I didn't mean it like that, he said quickly. Then how did you mean it? Silence. He opened his mouth, closed it. Tried again. It was pressure. You caught me off guard. I didn't know what to say, and they were all asking, and I just... You told them it was cringe. His jaw tightened. I didn't mean you, he said. I tilted my head slightly. Then what did you mean? Another pause. Longer this time, because now he had nowhere to go. No version of this that made him look better. I messed up, he said finally. There it was. The safest sentence he had. I nodded once. You did. He stepped a little closer. Not enough to touch. Just enough to try and re-enter my space. I was going to talk to you, he said quickly. I just needed time. That's all this was. I wasn't saying no. I just needed time. You weren't thinking, I said quietly. You were managing. He frowned. What does that mean? It means you didn't hesitate because you cared. You hesitated because you didn't want to deal with the consequences in that moment. That landed. I could see it. You were polite to my face, I continued, and honest behind my back. He shook his head again. No, that's not fair. It's accurate. My voice didn't change, didn't rise, didn't break, and that was what made it harder for him. Because there was nothing to fight, only something to sit in. I didn't think you'd see it, he said. And the second the words left his mouth, he knew. I saw it happen. That moment. Because that was the closest thing to truth he had said since he got here. I gave a small nod. I know. Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Final. He ran a hand over his face. This isn't who I am, he said. I almost smiled, but didn't. It is, I said softly. Or at least, it's the version of you that shows up when you think it doesn't matter. He looked at me like he wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Because somewhere underneath everything, he knew I was right. I love you, he said suddenly. Late. Desperate. Carefully placed. I held his gaze. I believe you think you do, I said. That hit harder than anger ever could. His expression shifted. What does that mean? He asked. It means love isn't what you say when things are easy, I replied. It's what you protect when they're not. Silence again. Longer. He didn't step closer. Didn't reach for me. Because now, he understood enough. I can fix this, he said quietly. No, I said. Just that. No explanation. No extension. No softness. And for the first time, he stopped trying to control the conversation, because there was nothing left to control. I stepped back, hand on the door. This is done, I said. And as I closed it, I saw it, that moment, the exact second it hit him. Not that he had lost an argument, but that he had lost something he couldn't talk his way back into. And outside, for the first time, he didn't move. I didn't watch him leave. That mattered more than I expected, because there was a version of me, the old version, that would have stayed by the door. Listening, waiting, hoping he would knock again. Say something different. Try harder. But that version of me was gone. I walked away before he could give me a reason to doubt myself. That was the difference now. Before, I would have stayed, listened longer, explained more, given him room to fix what he had broken. Now, I understood something I hadn't before. Some things don't need fixing. They need ending. The apartment felt different that morning. Not lighter. Not yet. But clearer. Like the air had shifted just enough for me to finally see what had always been there. I made coffee out of habit. Didn't really want it, but the routine helped. Simple actions. Measured steps. Something steady while everything else settled. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I looked at it for a moment before answering. Hello? There was a pause. Then a familiar voice. One of his friends. The same one who had laughed in the chat. Hey, Natalie, he said. And even through the phone, I could hear it. Uncertainty. I just wanted to say something. I didn't respond. I let him continue. About last night, he added. It got out of hand. We were just joking. Nobody meant anything by it. There it was again. That word. Joking. Doing all the work for people who didn't want to take responsibility. I read everything, I said. Yeah, I know, he replied quickly. That's why I'm calling. I just think maybe it's being taken a little too seriously. A little too seriously. I let that sit, then asked quietly. Would you have said any of that to my face? Silence. Immediate. Heavy. No, he admitted. Then you meant it. He exhaled, frustrated. That's not fair. People say things in private. Exactly. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. People say what they actually think in private. Another pause. Longer this time, because there was no way around that. I'm sorry, he said finally. And for a second, it almost sounded real. But it wasn't regret. It was discomfort. There's a difference. Take care, I said, and hung up. The call stopped after that. Not completely, but enough to notice. Like something had shifted across the entire group. Because now, it wasn't just between me and Owen anymore. The illusion had broken in front of all of them, and no one knew how to stand in it. Later that afternoon, his mother called again. I answered without hesitation. Natalie, she said, her voice quieter than before. I spoke to him. I figured. A pause. Then, he tried to explain it away. Of course he did. He said it was just a joke, that his friends exaggerated it. I leaned against the window. And what do you think? I asked. Another pause. Careful. Measured. I think a man who respects someone doesn't need to be reminded to do so, she said. That settled something in me. Not because I needed validation, but because it confirmed what I already knew. He doesn't understand what he's done, she added. He does, I said. He just doesn't want it to define him. That may not be his choice anymore. Not anger. Not punishment. Just consequence. We didn't talk long after that. There was nothing left to fix. Nothing left to interpret. Just acknowledgement. Reality. When the call ended, something else ended with it. The last thread. The last connection to what I thought my life was going to be. The rest of the day passed quietly. No breakdown. No collapse. Just settling. I moved through the apartment, noticing things I hadn't before. The light. The silence. The absence. And for the first time, it didn't scare me. That night, my phone buzzed one last time. His name. A message. I'm sorry. Just that. No explanation. No defense. No follow-up. I stared at it for a moment, then locked my phone. Not because it didn't matter, but because it didn't change anything. Some apologies come too late. Not in time, but in truth. And this one didn't reach far enough. I turned off the lights. The apartment fell into darkness. Quiet. Still, but not empty. Because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. A month later, the silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt settled. Not the kind of silence that comes from avoidance. The kind that comes after something has already ended and stayed ended. I didn't block Owen. That would have felt like I was still reacting to him. Still adjusting my world around his presence. I wasn't. I just stepped out of it. His messages slowed over time. From constant to occasional to almost nothing. Apologies. Explanations. Silence. Then another attempt. Softer. More careful. Like he was trying to find the right version of himself to present. The version that would work. But I had already seen the one that didn't. And once you see that, you don't unsee it. A week after everything happened, I heard he had started telling the story differently. Of course he had. In his version, it wasn't that he mocked me. It was that things were misunderstood. That everything was taken out of context. That I reacted too strongly. No mention of tone. No mention of laughter. No mention of the exact words he chose when he thought I wasn't looking. Just edits. Careful ones. The kind that protect your image while slowly erasing your responsibility. I didn't correct it. Didn't reach out. Because people who rewrite the truth usually aren't doing it for you. They're doing it for themselves. And I wasn't interested in being part of that. Instead, I noticed something else. My days felt quieter. Not emptier. Clearer. I wasn't checking my phone anymore. Wasn't replaying conversations. wasn't trying to reinterpret things into something less painful. I wasn't explaining him to myself anymore. That part had stopped. Completely. And with it, something else disappeared too. The version of me that was willing to ignore discomfort just to keep something stable. I saw it now. All of it. The pauses. The half-answers. The deflections. None of it had been dramatic enough to demand attention. But all of it had been pointing in the same direction. I just hadn't followed it. Until I had no choice. One afternoon, I ran into someone who knew him. Not a close friend. Just someone in that wider circle. She hesitated when she saw me. "Hey," she said carefully. "Hey." A pause. I heard. Things didn't end well. I almost smiled. "That's one way to say it," I replied. She nodded slowly, like she understood enough not to ask more. "He seems different," she added. "Quieter." I didn't respond to that, because whatever he felt now was his, not mine. We said goodbye shortly after, and as I walked away, I realized something I hadn't expected. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I wasn't hurt in that sharp, immediate way either. What I felt was something steadier, understanding. Not of why he did what he did, but of what it meant. Because that's the part people misunderstand. They think moments like that, one message, one mistake, one bad decision, are what end relationships. They're not. They reveal them. What ended wasn't us. It was the illusion I had been standing inside. And once it broke, there was nothing left to hold on to. That night, I sat by the window again. Same city, same lights, same quiet movement of everything continuing without pause. But I wasn't the same. I didn't feel rejected. I didn't feel left behind. I felt aligned. Like something inside me had finally caught up to something I had been ignoring for a long time. My phone buzzed once. Unknown number. I looked at it. Didn't pick up. Didn't need to. Because whatever it was, an explanation, an apology, another version of the story, it didn't matter anymore. I turned the screen face down and let it stay there. Some people don't lose you in the moment they hurt you. They lose you in the moment they show you who they are, when they think you'll never see it. And once you do, you don't just hear them. You understand them.